A lone Comanche warrior rides into the dust-choked dawn of 1874, his eyes carrying the weight of too much blood and too many ghosts. Nayati came to Red Hill only for grain, never expecting to find a widow named Evelyn Turner, broken by loss yet unbowed, clinging to her young son Charlie, and a fragile home on the edge of ruin. But when the killers who murdered her husband return, shadows from Nayati's own violent past rise to claim them all. Can a man haunted by war truly protect what he never dared to love? This legend ends in tears for millions. Stay until the final breath to discover why redemption came at such a terrible price. Hit subscribe now, drop in the comments where you're watching from, and let's ride this heartbreaking trail together. You won't believe what happens next. The sun burned low and unforgiving over the Texas Panhandle in 1874, turning the shortgrass prairie into a sea of pale golden dust. A lone rider topped the last rise above Red Hill and drew rein. The town, if it could be called that, lay scattered below, a crooked line of false front buildings, a windmill creaking in the hot wind, and the thin thread of a creek that barely deserved the name. The man was Comanche, though the years and the miles had worn away much of the old markings. Nayati sat tall in a worn McClellan saddle, cavalry jacket faded to a nameless gray, hair cut short for a life on the move. Scars traced his forearms and the backs of his hands like dry washes after a flash flood. He carried few illusions and fewer possessions. A Winchester, a good knife, a paint gelding that had never faltered, and memories he could not outride. He had come for grain, nothing more. Oats for the horse, cornmeal for himself. Then he would vanish west again, the way he had vanished from every place before. The gelding picked its careful way down the slope. Nayati kept his eyes restless. Rooftops, shadowed doorways, the open stretch of the single street. A man in patched denim paused on the boardwalk, stared, then spat and turned away. A woman snatched her child indoors. No one spoke. No one had to. He dismounted at the general store, looped the reins and stepped onto the sagging porch. The bell above the door gave a tired jangle. Cooler air met him inside, heavy with coffee, tobacco, saddle soap, and the faint iron tang of coal oil. Shelves climbed the walls, sparsely filled. Behind a scarred counter stood a woman in her early 30s, sleeves rolled, apron streaked with flour. Wheat blonde hair pulled back, strands loose at her temples, eyes the color of winter sky. Tired but steady, she looked up from a ledger, measured him without flinching. "Afternoon," she said, voice low, calm, carrying the ghost of a southern drawl. Nayati touched his hat brim. "Ma'am, oats and cornmeal." She nodded toward the rear. "Bins along the back wall. Scales by the door when you're ready." He moved past her, boots quiet on the pine planks. As he scooped oats into a burlap sack, a boy slipped from behind a pyramid of cracker barrels. 7 years old, maybe 8. Same blonde hair, freckles like scattered copper coins across his nose. He stared openly. "You're Indian," the boy announced. "Charlie." The woman's tone carried mild reproof. Charlie paid no attention. "You fight anybody?" Nayati straightened, sack half full. "Some." "Against soldiers?" "Some." The boy considered him. "Pa said Comanche were the fiercest on the plains." The words landed like a stone in still water. Nayati felt the ripple move through his chest but let nothing show. He carried the sack to the counter. The woman, Evelyn, the sign above the ledger read, Evelyn Turner, set the scale, noted the weight, and scratched a figure with a stub pencil. $2. He placed the coins down, silver worn smooth by years of handling. Their eyes met for a second longer than the transaction required. "You passing through?" she asked. "Reckon." "Most do." She glanced toward the window where sunlight cut harsh angles across the floor. "Not much here to hold a man." Nayati lifted the sacks to his shoulder. "Obliged." He was almost to the door when she spoke again. "Evelyn." He paused, hand on the jam. "Nayati." She gave a small nod, then bent back to her figures as though the moment had been nothing at all. Outside, he tied the sacks, mounted, and turned the gelding west. The street lay empty save for a yellow dog nosing trash along the planks. Halfway past the last building, he glanced over his shoulder. She stood in the doorway now, one hand raised against the glare. The boy beside her, clutching her apron. They watched him right away, not with hostility, not with curiosity exactly, but with something quiet and watchful. Nayati faced forward, jaw set. 20 miles by dark, he told himself. Red Hill would be smoky on the horizon by morning. Yet the image stayed. The woman straight-backed in the doorway, the boy small and unafraid. The way the light caught the loose strands of her hair. It lodged in him like a burr under a saddle blanket. Small, persistent, impossible to ignore. He spurred the paint into a lope and tried to outrun it. He did not succeed. The paint gelding carried him 15 miles that first night, but sleep came hard under the stars. Nayati rolled in his blanket near a thin trickle of water, staring at the dark until the burr in his mind grew sharper. By morning, the decision was made without words. He would return to Red Hill. Not for her, he told himself. For the horse. The oats were running low already. 3 days later, dust rose again on the horizon. Evelyn was sweeping the porch when the rider appeared. Same paint horse, same straight-back seat. She paused, broom still, and watched him tie up without hurry. Charlie burst from the store, eyes wide. "You came back," the boy said, almost accusing. Nayati tipped his hat. "Coffee's gone bad. Need more." Evelyn set the broom against the wall. "We've got fresh ground. Come in." Inside, the air felt different now, less guarded, though the shelves still held the same sparse stock. Nayati bought a pound of beans, paid, then lingered by the stove where a pot simmered. Evelyn noticed the way his gaze flicked to the sagging rafter above the counter, where water stains bloomed like dark flowers. "That leak's been there since spring," she said. "Keeps the flour damp." He studied it a moment longer. "Got tools?" She hesitated, then nodded toward the back room. "Pa's old kit's still there. Hammer, nails, some pitch." Without asking permission, Nayati fetched the box, climbed onto the counter, and began prying loose the rotten board. Evelyn watched from below, arms crossed, saying nothing as wood shavings drifted to the floor. Charlie fetched nails when asked, proud to hand them up one by one. By noon, the new plank was set, tar smeared thick along the seams. Nayati stepped down, wiped his hands on his pants, and turned to leave. "You didn't have to do that," Evelyn said quietly. "Didn't cost much." She met his eyes. "It cost time. Time you could have spent riding on." He shrugged. Horse needed the rest anyway. She almost smiled, almost. "Come by tomorrow if you're still around. I'll have cornbread fresh." He gave a single nod and walked out into the heat. The next day he was there again, earlier this time. Evelyn had the cornbread wrapped in cloth on the counter. Nayati ate standing, silent except for the scrape of the tin plate. Charlie sat on a barrel swinging his legs, peppering him with questions about mustangs and buffalo hunts. Nayati answered in short bursts, careful not to give too much, yet enough that the boy's eyes stayed bright. After the meal, Evelyn spoke while wiping the counter. "Bankman came yesterday, Mr. Hargrove. Says the note's due in 60 days. Full amount or they foreclose." Nayati set the plate down slowly. "How much short?" "Near 300, after what I scraped together from sales." She kept her voice level, but her knuckles whitened on the rag. "Husband took the loan for seed and stock 2 years back. Never got the chance to pay it down." Nayati looked out the window where the street lay empty. "Folks here help. Some would if they could. Most can't." She folded the cloth. "Doesn't matter. I'll figure it out." He left without reply, but the weight of her words settled in his chest like lead shot. 2 more visits followed in the next week. Each time he found small work. Tightening hinges on the back door, splitting kindling for the stove, checking the corral fence behind the store where Evelyn kept a milk goat. Charlie trailed him like a shadow, learning how to hold a post steady while Nayati drove staples. Evelyn watched from the doorway, arms folded, measuring him in silence. One evening, as the sun bled red across the hills, Nayati finished mending a broken wagon tongue in the yard. Evelyn brought him water in a tin cup. Their fingers brushed when he took it. "You don't talk much," she said. "Never needed to. Most men around here talk plenty, usually about things that don't matter." He drank, handed the cup back. "Words don't fix leaks." She looked toward the darkening prairie. "No, but they can keep a person company when the nights get long." Nayati studied her profile, the stubborn line of her jaw, the faint scar above her eyebrow from some old fall or fight. Something in him shifted, small but definite, like a stone settling deeper in a riverbed. "I'll be riding out soon," he said. She nodded. "Figured you would." But when he mounted the next morning, he did not point the gelding west. He circled back toward town instead, telling himself it was only for one more sack of grain. He knew it was a lie. The lie held for another week, each day pulling Nayati deeper into the rhythm of Red Hill. He slept in the hayloft above Evelyn's stable now, paying with labor instead of coin, and the gelding grew fat on good oats. Mornings found him splitting rails for the corral, while Charlie practiced knots with spare rope. Afternoons blurred into quiet hours where Evelyn measured flour and Nayati sharpened tools on the whetstone, their silences comfortable, almost companionable. Then the dust cloud came from the east one blistering afternoon, thicker than any trail herd, moving fast and deliberate. 6 riders, hard men in dusters and low-slung holsters, horses lathered and mean-eyed. They reined up in front of the store, boots hitting the boardwalk like hammer blows. The leader, tall, raw-boned, with a scar splitting his left eyebrow, spat tobacco juice into the dirt and swung down. Harlan Crow. The name hit Evelyn like a slap when she stepped onto the porch, Charlie half hidden behind her skirt. She had known this day would come, had dreaded it in the quiet hours, but seeing him here, real and close, turned her stomach to stone. Harlan removed his hat with mock courtesy. "Mrs. Turner, been a spell. Thought we'd collect what's owed." Evelyn kept her voice steady. "I told your man last month. There's no debt. My husband settled with you before he died." Harlan laughed, low and rough. "Settled? He paid half what he promised for protection. The rest's interest now. $350, cash, or we take it in trade." His eyes slid over the store, the corral, then lingered on her. "Plenty here worth the price." Charlie clutched her leg tighter. Nayati, who had been oiling a saddle in the shade of the stable, straightened slowly. He set the rag aside, hand drifting near the knife at his belt. But he stayed put, for now. Evelyn lifted her chin. "Leave. You've got no claim here." Harlan stepped closer, boots creaking on the planks. "Got every claim. Your man signed papers. Blood's on the ink." He nodded to his men. 2 dismounted, rifles loose in their hands, and started toward the door. That was when Nayati moved. He crossed the yard in long strides, boots silent on the hardpack, and planted himself between the riders and the porch. The air thickened, heavy with the smell of horse sweat and gun oil. Harlan turned, sizing him up. "Who the hell are you?" "Nobody you know," Nayati said. The scarred man's mouth curled. "Comanche, ain't you? Heard your kind was mostly gone or penned up. What's a stray dog like you doing in my business?" Nayati's gaze never wavered. "Walk away, while you still can." Harlan studied him, then laughed again, this time colder. "Big talk for a breed with no tribe. Step aside or we'll drag you." One of the riders levered around into his Winchester. The metallic click echoed off the false fronts. Charlie whimpered. Evelyn pulled him back, but her eyes locked on Nayati's back, straight, unyielding. Nayati's hand rested on the knife hilt now. Last chance. Harlan's smile vanished. He jerked his head. "Take him." 2 men rushed. Nayati sidestepped the first, drove an elbow into the second's throat, and drew the blade in one fluid motion. The man gagged, dropped to his knees. The first swung a fist. Nayati caught the wrist, twisted, and heard bones snap. A rifle cracked, a warning shot into the dirt at Nayati's feet. "Enough!" Harlan barked. His men froze. He stared at Nayati, reassessing. "You got fight in you, but you're 1 man against 6, and we'll be back tomorrow, with more." He mounted and wheeled his horse. "Think on that debt, Mrs. Turner, and tell your redskin friend to ride out before we bury him with your husband." The riders turned, dust rising in their wake. Silence fell, broken only by the windmill's slow creak. Evelyn stepped forward, voice low. "You shouldn't have done that." Nayati sheathed the knife, knuckles still white. "They were coming in. They'll come harder now." She looked at him, really looked, seeing the old scars, the fresh tension in his shoulders. "You could leave. No shame in it." He met her eyes. "I've left enough places." Charlie peeked out. You heard him, mister. Like in the stories. Nayati ruffled the boy's hair once, briefly and awkwardly. Stories end differently sometimes. Evelyn touched his arm, light, fleeting. Stay for supper. Least we can do. He nodded once. Inside, as she lit the lamp and set plates, the weight of what had just happened settled over them all. The banknote was bad enough. Harlan Crow was worse. And Nayati knew, deep in the marrow where old battles lived, that this was no longer about grain or repairs or borrowed time. This was war come calling again. If stories like this, of lone riders facing down the dark for people worth protecting, pull at you the way they do me, hit that subscribe button right now. It keeps these tales riding out to folks who need them, and I'd be obliged if you joined the trail with us. The night after Harlan's riders left, the lamp in the store burned late. Nayati and Evelyn sat at the rough pine table while Charlie slept upstairs, the boy's soft snores drifting down like distant thunder. Maps of the creek bottoms and back trails lay spread between them, drawn in charcoal on butcher paper. Nayati traced lines with a calloused finger, marking choke points, deadfalls, places where the land itself could fight. Evelyn leaned in, studying the marks. We can't hold them here in town. Too many windows, too many ways in. River bend north of the ford, Nayati said. Narrow trail, high banks. They come that way to circle back unseen. She nodded slowly. I know a family. Old man Whitaker and his boys. They'll stand if we ask, not fighters, but they can watch the roads. Need eyes more than guns. He folded the paper. We set traps tomorrow. Wire, pits, dry brush for fire if it comes to that. They worked through the small hours, voices low, plans sharpening like a blade on stone. By dawn, Nayati was out stringing trip lines across the dry wash, while Evelyn rode to the Whitakers with a quiet plea. The old man listened, spat, then saddled his mule without a word. His sons followed. For 2 days the town held its breath. Nayati moved like smoke, checking snares, sighting rifle lines from the ridge, teaching Charlie how to load a scattergun with steady hands. The boy listened hard, fear and pride mixing in his wide eyes. Evelyn kept the store open, sold what little she had, all while her gaze flicked to the eastern horizon every few minutes. Then the third morning broke gray and heavy with dust. Riders appeared at the far end of the valley. More than 6 now, 12 at least, Harlan at the front, with a fresh bandage on his arm and murder in his stare. They came slowly, deliberately, letting the hoofbeats roll like warning drums. Nayati waited on the ridge above the river bend, Winchester across his knees. Below, Whitaker's boys crouched in the willows, shotguns ready. Evelyn stood at the store porch with Charlie behind her, the scattergun heavy in her arms. She had sent word, hold until the signal. The riders reached the ford. Harlan raised a hand and halted the column. Come out, Mrs. Turner. Time to pay up or burn. No answer came, only wind hissing through the cottonwoods. He signaled. 4 men spurred forward, splashing across the shallow water. The lead horse struck the tripwire Nayati had stretched low and tight. The animal screamed, legs buckling, rider pitching headfirst into the shallows. Gunfire cracked from the willows. One rider jerked, slumped in the saddle. Another wheeled his mount and fled. Harlan roared orders. His men dismounted, spreading out, using rocks and sage for cover. Bullets whined off the banks. Nayati levered around, squeezed, and dropped a man clutching his thigh. But numbers pressed hard. Harlan's crew flanked the narrow ground, forcing Whitaker's boys to fall back, step by grudging step. Then the trap reversed. One of Harlan's scouts had circled wide in the dark hours and found the back trail to town. He rode in silent, slipped behind the store. Charlie saw the shadow first, moving past the corral, and cried out. Evelyn spun, fired the scattergun. Buckshot shredded fence rails but missed the man. He lunged, grabbed Charlie by the collar, and dragged the boy toward his horse. Ma! Charlie's scream sliced the air. Evelyn charged, but the man backhanded her hard, sending her sprawling into the dust. He mounted Charlie, kicking under his arm, and spurred toward the river to rejoin the main group. Nayati heard the cry from the ridge. He broke cover, boots sliding on gravel as he ran downslope. Bullets snapped past his ears. He reached the ford, dove behind a boulder, fired twice, dropped one pursuer, But the kidnapper was already across, galloping toward Harlan. Harlan laughed when he saw the boy. "Look what we got! Insurance!" He jerked his horse around. "Drop your guns, Redskin, or the kid bleeds." Nayati rose, rifle steady, but the range was long, and the boy pressed too close to the rider's chest. His finger froze on the trigger. Harlan's men closed in, rifles trained. Evelyn staggered up from the dirt, blood trickling from her lip, eyes wild with fury. "Let him go!" Harlan ignored her and nodded to his lieutenant. The man dismounted, strode to Nayati with deliberate steps, rifle butt raised. Nayati swung. Too late. The stock cracked against his temple. Darkness exploded behind his eyes. He dropped to his knees, blood flooding his mouth, then pitched forward into the dust. Harlan dismounted and kicked Nayati's rifle away. "Tie him. We'll take our time with this one." They bound Nayati's wrists with raw hide and dragged him upright. He swayed, vision swimming, but saw Evelyn running toward them, only to be stopped by two riders who leveled pistols at her chest. Charlie struggled in the kidnapper's grip, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on his face. "Let my ma go." Harlan leaned close to Nayati, breath sour with tobacco. "You thought you could play hero? This ain't your fight. Never was." Nayati spat blood onto the ground. "It's mine now." Harlan backhanded him, splitting the lip wider. "We'll see how long that lasts." They mounted, dragging Nayati behind a horse on a lead rope. The column turned east, dust rising thick, swallowing the ford and the town behind it. Evelyn stood alone in the road, hands clenched at her sides, watching until the riders vanished into the heat shimmer. On the ridge, Whitaker's boys crawled from cover, faces grim. One muttered, "They got the kid. And him." The old man spat into the dirt. "Ain't over yet." But in that moment, with Nayati bound and bleeding, Charlie a hostage, and Evelyn left staring at the empty prairie, it felt finished. The traps had failed. The plan had crumbled. And the man who had finally found something worth standing for lay trussed like game, heading toward whatever slow death Harlan had planned. The wind carried the last echoes of hoofbeats away, leaving only silence and the bitter taste of defeat. The dust from Harlan's column had barely settled when Evelyn started moving. She walked straight to the stable, saddled the old bay mare with hands that shook only once, then took the scattergun and a cartridge belt from under the counter. Whitaker found her there, tightening the cinch. "You can't go alone," the old man said. She looked at him, eyes red-rimmed but clear. "I won't, but I won't wait either." He nodded once, gathered his two boys, and they rode out together, following the fresh tracks east toward the Badlands where Harlan liked to hole up. They found the camp at dusk in a shallow canyon ringed by red rock walls, a fire spitting sparks into the purple sky. Nayati sat tied to a juniper stump, head bowed, blood crusted black on his temple and shirt front. Charlie huddled nearby, wrists bound, staring at the ground. Harlan paced the firelight, bottle in hand, boasting to his men about the easy score. Evelyn and the Whitakers dismounted a quarter-mile out, crept along the rim until they could see the layout clearly. Nayati lifted his head when he heard the first pebble roll. His eyes found Evelyn's silhouette against the skyline. Brief, unmistakable. He tested the rawhide on his wrists. It had loosened from hours of subtle twisting. He waited. Harlan turned toward the captives, grinning. "Time to send a message back to that widow. Start with the boy." One of the men stepped forward, knife drawn. Charlie shrank back. Nayati surged against the ropes, once hard, and the juniper post cracked. He rolled, came up with the broken stub in his hands like a club, and swung. The man with the knife caught the blow across the jaw and dropped without a sound. Gunfire erupted. Whitaker's boys opened from the rim, steady shots dropping two riders before they could mount. Harlan spun, pistol rising, but Evelyn was already sliding down the loose scree, scattergun leveled. She fired both barrels into the nearest gunman. He folded like wet paper. Chaos swallowed the camp. Men shouted, horses screamed, and bolted. Nayati kicked free of the stump, grabbed a fallen revolver, and put 2 rounds into the man guarding Charlie. The boy scrambled to him. Nayati cut the ropes with the dead man's knife and shoved him toward the rocks. "Stay low!" Harlan charged through the smoke, pistol barking. A bullet grazed Nayati's shoulder, tearing cloth and flesh. He staggered but kept moving, closing the distance. Harlan fired again, missed. Nayati tackled him low, drove him backward toward the canyon's narrow throat, where the ground fell away into nothing. They grappled in the dirt, fists and elbows, blood mixing with sweat. Harlan was bigger, stronger in the short bursts, but Nayati fought with the cold precision of a man who had nothing left to lose. He locked Harlan's wrist, twisted until the pistol clattered free, then slammed his forearm across the scarred throat. Harlan gasped, eyes bulging. You think this changes anything? You're still a killer. Always will be. Nayati's voice came low, steady. Maybe, but tonight I'm killing for something that matters. He heaved. Harlan's boots skidded on the loose gravel at the edge. For a heartbeat they teetered. Then Nayati shoved hard. Harlan's arms windmilled. He disappeared over the drop with a single fading curse. The sound of his body striking rock echoed once, then silence. Nayati swayed on the brink, breath ragged. Blood soaked his sleeve, dripped dark onto the stone. He turned back. The remaining men had broken, 3 dead, the rest scattering into the dark on panicked horses. Whitaker's boys climbed down, cautious but victorious. Evelyn reached him first. She touched his face, fingers trembling now that the fight was done. You're hurt bad. Been worse. He looked past her to Charlie, who stood frozen a few paces away. Nayati knelt, slow and careful. You all right, son? Charlie nodded, then threw his arms around Nayati's neck. The warrior held him, awkward at first, then tight, while Evelyn wrapped a strip of her shawl around the worst of the wounds. They rode back through the night. Nayati slumped in the saddle between Evelyn and Whitaker. By the time Red Hill's lights appeared on the horizon, fever had set in. He spoke little, only once turning his head toward her. The house. It's safe now. She squeezed his hand. We all are. Dawn found them at the store. Folks gathered, quiet, respectful, as Evelyn and Charlie helped Nayati inside. He lay on the cot in the back room, breathing shallow. Evelyn sat beside him, bathing his forehead with cool water from the creek. Charlie curled at the foot of the bed, exhausted but refusing to leave. Nayati's eyes opened near midday. He looked at them both, really looked, and a small, tired smile touched his mouth. Found it, he murmured. Home. Not on the plains. Right here. Evelyn leaned close. Stay with us. He shook his head once, faintly. Already did. His hand found hers and held for a long moment. Then the grip slackened. The room grew still except for the soft creak of the windmill outside and Charlie's muffled sob. They buried him on the low hill overlooking town, where the grass bent under the constant wind, and the view stretched clear to the horizon he had once ridden toward alone. Evelyn placed a simple stone marker, no name carved, only a single eagle feather tied with rawhide. Charlie stood beside her, small hand in hers, staring at the fresh earth. Months later, the banknote was paid, not with gold from the fight, but with the quiet help of folks who had seen what one man could do when he chose to stand. The store stayed open. Charlie grew taller, learned to ride straight back like the warrior who had saved him. And on quiet evenings, Evelyn would walk the hill, sit by the marker, and listen to the wind carry whispers across the prairie. Whispers of redemption, of a fight finally won, of a lone rider who had come for grain and left behind something far more lasting. The West was still harsh, still unforgiving, but in Red Hill, a piece of it had changed forever. What did Nayati's final choice stir in you? The price of redemption or the quiet power of standing for someone else? Did Evelyn's strength surprise you or Charlie's courage in that desperate moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone and love hearing how these old trails hit different hearts. Your time here means more than you know. Grateful you rode this far with us. If tales of grit, loss, and hard-won hope keep pulling you back, stick around. The next legend is already saddling up, and it's one you won't want to miss. See you on the trail soon.